they hyperbole it. So the stuff that the media cannot say or will not say, they hyperbole it. So they will make, so that fostering story, that was used by the far right. Again, you go on their forums, you go on their website, you go on Facebook, whatever, they're all talking about it. This was a driving force. So talk about impact, you are empowering the far right. You go, oh well, that's not my intention as a journalist. Yeah, but you did a shit story that wasn't true and they're using it. And by the time the truth is out, they don't care. The lie has spread. I always say it's harder to dispel, it takes more intellect and more effort to dispel bullshit than it does to come up with it in the first place. And that's the environment in which we're in. So yes, they have been enabled by the media to do this, to able to say stuff about Muslim groomers, to say stuff about Muslim parents forcing young children to convert, or halal meals and forcing people to give halal meals, or whatever story it is. It always originates in the press, and then they hyperbole it, and then they'll say the stuff the media don't want you to know, the liberal media don't want you to know this, or the politicians are hiding this. So they themselves are also working class communities that are marginalized, some of them, but they also use it. They're also victims in a certain sense of the media, but they've got more of a voice because there's just more of them. They're using alternative media now, social media, to spread their word.
You mentioned the East London Mosque, and I spoke to some other journalists. The East London Mosque has faced in Tower Hamlets significant attacks in the right-wing press over the kind of many years, and it's been labelled all sorts. Only I think last week it was attacked by Ed Hussein, who used to obviously be a worshipper there once upon a time, and he was recounting stories of, like, apparently he was fundraising money for Hamas at the East London Mosque. That's what he said. But why do you think it's kind of portrayed as extremist? Now, some other journalists have told me that, oh well, East London Mosque is the largest mosque in London, and it's in London and it's accessible. That's why we write stories about. That's why journalists write stories about East London Mosque. I don't know, how true that is. I want to just.
I think there's one. It's its physical presence. You've got a mosque in the East End of London. It's got minarets. It says East London Mosque, and a lot of people go to it. So it's a focus point. Remember, these journalists don't have grassroots contacts. So whenever something used to happen, terrorist attack, go to the mosque, see if they knew him. I go, fam, the imam is not going to know the guy unless he had a personal relationship. Hundreds of people come in, they pray, they go home. No one really talks to each other that much, man. You go, sometimes, yes, salam alaikum, walaikum salam. That's it. Like, you stop hanging out outside the mosque unless the mosque says something that you actually knew the person or they taught here. So there's that aspect of this kind of the cultural bias that they have, with the lack of understanding of how mosques work. The second thing is that the mosque is seen as the center of kind of Islamic and Islamicization or Muslim community, even if it isn't. Like, they don't understand that, sometimes mosques don't really play a massive role in the community, even though East London Mosque is a very prominent and community mosque, and it's actually one of the good ones in terms of the facilities and what it offers to people. But also there's, I think, for some people, there's an inherent hatred and racism and Islamophobia against it. There's no way to get around that. That's what it is. That's what the driving force is. Not that it's just there, not that it's big, not that it's prominent, not that there's so many people who go there. It's just that that's a big mosque. We don't like Muslims. Let's target them.
Is that why the far right targets Islamic mosque, do you think?
Yeah, because they have a hatred, and that's why some journalists target it. Like, they feel, they haven't been inside a mosque. They don't know what it's about. Like, they have no clue. They see a woman in the niqab going, and they go, oh, I don't like that. There's something that doesn't sit well with them, right? It's not about, okay, if I don't like that, maybe I should look at myself and say why I don't like that, or why that doesn't sit well with me, or I don't like that, that's not on. Even though a minority of women wear the niqab, there's so much concentration on it. And also there's sometimes guys go there that don't speak English. There's cultural differences in the way that we speak. I've done voxes from outside East London Mosque in the Shadi Hepton, and people are very animated and move their arms and they gesticulate. That's not them being angry. That's just our culture, bruv. Like, some of us speak loudly and we wave our arms around. That's not anger. Don't be afraid. It's not intimidating. They're very friendly people. I bet you all, I said to my producer once, I bet any one of those people invite you back to their house for food and tea and stuff and happily talk to you. Because it's a cultural thing. So there's a lack of cultural understanding and cultural bias. But, ultimately, Europe has a history of Islamophobia and is inherent in society. And the history, when I mean history, it goes back to Spain, man. It goes back so far back. And that has never really gone. It's just manifested itself in very different ways, and it's gone through the education system and institutions, and it's always labeling the other. They've never really been comfortable with Muslims. And the problem is that we came here to work, and now we've built up communities. And for some people to say, damn, we've brought them here, but they still ain't changed. They still ain't like us. But we can still be here and be British and be different. Like the Jewish community is like that, but they don't get targeted the same way, and I'm glad they don't get targeted the same way. That right should also be extended to us as Muslims.
What do you think needs to change to tackle Islamophobia in the British press and media?
Stop hiring Muppets, more accountability, hire more journalists that are rooted in communities and then support them, and make sure that, like, that they don't lose their will to remain in the mainstream media.
Will more Muslim journalists make a difference?
Not necessarily the right kind of Muslim journalists. Like if you're going to hire like people like Ed Hussein and Majid Nawaz and that's not going to make any difference. If you're going to hire like the people that the BBC have hired that do the same stuff with the same outlook, that just the same Western liberal middle class white outlook with just a brown reporter, that's not going to change anything. If you're just going to carry on doing stuff about forced marriages and honour killings and you're not changing anything, you're just perpetuating it and just giving yourself legitimacy through a brown name or a Muslim name. You need people that understand communities, whether they're white, brown, black, that actually say, okay, wait, there's not voices of the unheard, there's those that people that you just deliberately don't make the effort to listen to. That's how journalism works, that's how society works. So hire people, more Muslim journalists, that know what they're going on about, and then support them. The amount of journalists that I know, Muslim journalists, have gone into these media organisations and end up leaving. Also, I've seen them crying after a meeting because of the stuff that they've had to do or the stuff that's been said, or the pressures that they come under on social media by other Muslim organisations who have a vested interest because they're getting money from government, or their reporting is going against the establishment line and therefore it affects their standing, and the kind of stuff that's there to hand them out. It's just like, it's not easy. It's not easy for Muslim journalists. I've seen them in tears. I've seen, like, there's not many of us, and sometimes we talk and I've said, look, I know it's tough. Some people have left. Other people say, I can't do this anymore. It's just having an effect on me, my mental health, my family. I go home upset every day and it's affecting my relationship with my wife and my children, or my husband and my children. So, it's not just about hiring more Muslim journalists, it's about retaining them and supporting them and say, okay, look, we know you come from a representative community, you are a representative, we will support you no matter what. That's not there, that political will isn't there.
What do you think the Muslim community needs to do to better engage with media, to make their views heard?
I wish we had kind of press officers everywhere, every mosque. I wish we had not the community leaders, but kind of media engagement.
Don't you think the MCB, Muslim Council of Britain, does a good job? They've been challenging a lot. Miqdad Versi has been
Miqdad, I have a lot of respect for Miqdad and I know what he does. But look, let's face it, right? Muslim Council of Britain is good for what they do, but let's look around the country and about the Muslims. Although they may have 1,000 affiliates, there's lots of Muslims that they find it hard to engage with, that are not a part of them, whether for theological reasons or ideological reasons or whatever, right? So they're not necessarily speak to everybody. Sometimes their stance, like in terms of Muslims joining the military, is out of touch with the grassroots. And I can say that as a journalist by facts. There's only 300 Muslims in the British military, and from those 300, I don't think most are British. They're from the Commonwealth. But yet the MCB is out of touch with that. They're just trying to get their seat back at the table, and I know it's a fine balance. But when you go to grassroots communities in Tower Hamlets, let's ask people here. I did a piece with the BBC about the British military, and I took extra time to do it, and I went to different areas, and everyone said I will not join. I will not join the British military because you're killing Muslims abroad. And that's the opinion in Tower Hamlets. That's the opinion in Birmingham, yet they're out of touch with that. Same with kind of government and establishment. There's a diversity of opinion, but I will tell you this much: grassroots, working class communities, Tower Hamlets,